Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the October My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. This month, the limited edition kit featured a gorgeous collection by 49 and Market called Art Options Alina. For this layout, I'm using one of the beautiful 12 by 12 inch pattern papers that we got in the kit and a number of the embellishments which were also included. If you're interested in seeing everything that's in the limited edition kit, you could check out my unboxing video. I will put a link in the description box. You can also see photos of the entire kit and all of the My Creative Scrapbook kits on the My Creative Scrapbook Instagram account or on their website. And there is a link to the website in the description box as well. I started off with a photo of both of my daughters at the New York Botanical Gardens. I'm using one of the die cut pieces that we got in the ephemera pack, this beautiful oval frame. I am mounting it on some thick white cardstock. I know that I'm going to be popping it up on some foam, so I wanted to reinforce the photo. And now I'm using some fun foam. I'm cutting it to size, and I'm going to have my photo popped up just to give it a little bit of extra dimension. Something that I do on most of my layouts just because I really like the idea of highlighting the photo and some of the embellishments on the layout. And the nice thing about the fun foam is that it gives elements a little bit of dimension, but not a whole lot. I wanted to use the stencil that we got in this month's kit, and I wanted to add a pattern to the background. I love the way the pattern paper is a very dark teal, so I knew that the white would show up really well. So I'm using some Liquitex gesso, I'm using a makeup sponge, and I'm putting it through that stencil. In the end, you don't see a ton of the stencil work. You do see some of it, but I just think that it's a nice way to highlight the photo and then also highlight another small cluster that I put in the upper left-hand corner. I don't want the stenciling to look even. I want some areas to look lighter and some areas to look darker. So I keep that in mind as I'm pressing down on that makeup sponge. In some cases, I press very hard, and in some cases, I press very lightly. Sometimes I will put the stencil back over what I've stenciled and put another coat of the gesso. And in other cases, I just really, really lightly dab the gesso on just so there'll be a little hint of the pattern of the stencil. Sometimes I'll use the stencil with modeling paste. Lately, I've been using gesso for the reason that you can apply the gesso in a way that some areas will be lighter and some areas will be darker. And that seems to be what I am doing now. Sometimes I'll use a technique for a while and then I switch over to another technique, and sometimes I will go back and sometimes I won't. But I have been enjoying using the gesso, and I really love it against these dark backgrounds. 49 and Market has been making just the most beautiful, colorful collections lately. In the summer, we got that beautiful Spectrum Sherbet collection. We got the Vixen collection last month, which had a lot of purples. I absolutely love that. And it had a lot of dark backgrounds. And then this collection is the same way, where there's opportunities to add white to the background, and it really shows up because of the darkness of the pattern paper. And of course, there were many different backgrounds, but I tended to pick out those darker backgrounds because recently I've just been really enjoying working with them. So now I'm done with the stenciling, and I'm adding some watered down white acrylic paint splatters. I started off by putting the splatters in the areas that I stenciled. I have the area where the photo is going to go on the right-hand side of the layout, and then I have a smaller cluster planned for the upper left-hand corner, so I added some splatters there, and then I added a few more splatters around the page. And I found that if you don't like white acrylic paint splatters, if you wipe them off right away, and of course carefully so you don't smear any of the other splatters, they come right off of the 49 and Market papers. And I don't know that that would always be the case. I've just found that it has been working recently. When I have a couple of splatters just in a spot I really don't want them, I found that if I wipe them away, they either disappear or they're just very, very faint. I wanted to layer some flowers on top of the pattern paper right around the photo. I fussy cut some flowers out of some of the packaging that was in the kit, and I put one of those flowers on the left-hand side. That's that larger flower, and I put a smaller flower on the right-hand side. I am going to move the flower that's on the right-hand side to the cluster that's on the upper left-hand side. Before I attach those flowers down to the layout, I add a little bit of Distress ink in Vintage Photo to the edges using a dauber. So I move the flower up to the top, and then I add a smaller flower on the right-hand side. There's already that beautiful large flower that is on the pattern paper, but I just wanted to add a little bit more to the layout. So I finished layering up the flowers, and then I took out the pack of flowers that I was absolutely in love with. I liked all of them. They're all beautiful, but I loved the way there was a pack of tiny little petite flowers in the kit this month, and I used those around the bottom of the frame. I just absolutely love that pack. I use every one of them on my layouts. I added a butterfly to the top of the frame. I had put some fun foam on both of the wings and some adhesive down the center so that when I pressed down the center, the wings bent up a little bit. I wanted to add some leaves to the flowers on the frame. I used actually two Martha Stewart punches, and then I used the same packaging that I fussy cut the flowers that I added earlier out of. There was a nice chunk of paper that was a beautiful teal color, so I used my punches and I punched out a number of leaves. Some are a little bit larger, some are a little bit smaller, and I layered those behind the butterfly and also along the sides of the frame. And then I added a couple more to the upper left-hand corner cluster, but I ended up removing those because I decided to just have those leaves on the frame. Now I'm adding some sentiments to the layout. I have a sentiment that says think happy thoughts, one that says beautiful moment, and another one that says be happy, be you. I'm popping them up on some foam, so before I pop them up on foam, I put a little bit of 120-pound cardstock behind each one. That just helps them to be a little bit more sturdy and then to keep their shape when I pop them up on the foam. Sometimes the page protectors can press down on some of the elements of the page, and if they're popped up on foam and not reinforced, it could cause them to bend a little bit, and I don't like that. So that's something I've been doing lately just to make sure that that doesn't happen. So now I'm working on the cluster in the upper left-hand corner. I have that flower that I fussy cut, and I decided to add two of those little flowers that I like so much to that cluster as well. I'm also adding a few fussy cut clusters of leaves up there. Now I'm deciding where I should put butterflies on the layout. There are some butterflies that are already on the pattern paper and I can't move those. So I was moving some of the orange and the yellowish butterflies around, trying to figure out where I wanted to have butterflies. There was one butterfly that had a white border to it, so I fussy cut that off so it would match with all of the other butterflies, and I continue to move those butterflies around the layout. Now I'm working on my title. I used an Elizabeth Craft Designs die that says Moments. I cut it out of thick white cardstock 4 times. I used some Distress Oxide in Abandoned Coral, and I inked one of the die cut pieces, and then I layered the other 3 on top of each other. I glued them together using some gel glue. I'm going to take the die cut piece that I inked with the Distress Oxide. I'm going to offset that slightly behind the white title. That's just going to help the title stand out a little bit from the background. Since the background is a little bit dark, I thought that the white would be the best color for the title and that the coral piece would just be a nice little addition with just a tiny bit of it showing. I made sure that everything was lined up, and then I place it right above the oval frame. Once the glue that I used to attach all the layers together was dry, I used some ATG adhesive and I attached the title down to the layout. I used ATG adhesive just in case I decided I wanted to move the title around a little bit. I'm slowly deciding where I want to put all of the butterflies on the layout. I'm putting that yellowish brown butterfly that I just put foam on the back of to the right of that cluster of sentiments. I also added one of the small flowers to the left-hand side of that cluster of sentiments. At the top of the layout, I'm gluing down two of the small flowers around that fussy cut orange flower, and I'm going to add a butterfly up there near that cluster. I'm just popping up the wings of a small orange butterfly and applying some ATG adhesive, and I will put that to the right of the cluster. I thought I might be done adding butterflies to the layout, so I got my self-adhesive pearls. I love putting these pearls down the centers of butterflies. I put a loose pearl as the head for several of the large butterflies, and then I started using strips of really tiny pearls and putting those underneath that first pearl that I put down. The difference in size between the loose pearl and the strips of pearls is very small, but I like that difference of having the head look a little bit bigger. So I went ahead and added strips of pearls on all the butterflies, and I really love that element. I love the way it draws attention to the butterflies, and it brings another texture and another material to the page. I used some gel glue to attach down those punched out leaf clusters that are on the frame. I used a Pinkfresh Studio die called Leafy branch, and I cut out one large branch and then I cut it into lots of individual pieces, and I am going to take those small pieces and just sprinkle them around the layout and tuck them into a couple of places just to bring a little bit of white to the layout and add another petite element. There's a lot of things on the layout that are very large in scale, and I like the idea of having a small leaf because I like to have things of different scales on my layout. So I finally decided to put another butterfly tucked behind the left-hand side of the title. So I attached that down, and then I of course had to make it match with all the other butterflies. So I put some pearls down the center of it. And now that I have all of the leaves distributed where I want them around the layout, I use a little bit of gel glue and I glue them down. And I just put a tiny bit of glue at the base of each leaf cluster. I don't put a lot of glue and glue the whole thing flat down to the page. I wanted to add a little bit of a highlight to those little tiny flowers. So I'm using some gesso and I'm using an old brush and I'm just dabbing that gesso on to the flowers. I'm just dabbing very gently. I just want to highlight the areas that are raised. The gesso I'm using is Finnabair heavy gesso. Whenever I dab some gesso onto these dimensional flowers, I always use a dry brush. I don't want to add water. That will water the gesso down and it won't be as white. And then it also could cause the gesso to go in areas where I don't want because the gesso will be a little more fluid. I thought that I needed another little leaf cluster in that small cluster on the top of the layout. And now I'm going to add some really, really tiny pearls to all of those dimensional flowers. I saw this look on a Prima Instagram post and I thought that the pearls looked really nice actually on the petals of the flowers. I'm using some very, very tiny pearls. They're 3 millimeters. I use white pearls, a pink pearl, and a very light peach pearl. And I use some glossy accents and I glue those pearls to all those flowers. I didn't show much of that footage because I spent a lot of time dropping the pearls, but I think that you get the idea. I just used an inexpensive pair of tweezers and those helped me to place the pearls. I wanted to add an antenna and then a couple of highlights to some of the butterflies. So I used some Faber-Castell white lettering markers that I had recently purchased. They worked well, but like most white pens that I buy, I had to put a couple of layers on top of each other in order for the lines to be as white as I wanted them. At first, I was just going to add the antenna to each of the butterflies that didn't already have them, and then I was thinking that I would also add some other touches to the butterflies and a couple of little touches to these punched out leaves as well. They're very subtle, but once I start adding touches with a marker, I tend to keep going. I continued to add the white lines, mainly to the butterflies. The butterfly on the lower right-hand corner, the blue one, it had some white lines along the edges, and I thought that I would emphasize those and make them a little more white. And these lines are the very last touch that I add to the layout. and in a couple of seconds you will see some close-ups. Thank you very, very much for watching, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. I'm trying to respond to all of your comments. I absolutely love reading them, and I try to take my time and enjoy them. Thank you so much for leaving them. In the description box, I always leave the link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You can view all of the beautiful kits they have available there, and you can purchase a subscription if you would like. And I will leave a link to this month's unboxing in the description box. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.